Good morning and welcome everybody to our new webinar series. I would like to thank you all for joining this session and taking the time out of your extremely busy schedules. We do hope that you take this opportunity to raise important questions to our panelists on the various topics we intend to uncover over the course of this morning and the upcoming months. Today, we also have a few non-ACM clients joining us. So for all of those participants who have not yet met me in the flesh or online during those wonderful lockdown years, my name is James Veal, and I head up the risk division of the ACM group of companies. We've designed this webinar series around a 10-month program, leaving December and January free. And we'll be scheduling them around the same time, this time, to try and accommodate you in the so-called quietest period, if such a thing exists in the motor industry. And we also sort of intend not to exceed 2 hours per webinar. And I must say, what better timekeeper do we have than our dear old friend Eskom? Our area sheds at 12 today, so no pressure there to keep this on track. Although these webinars are aimed primarily at the key individuals of dealerships, there's no real reason why your F&Is or business managers would not benefit from these sessions. So for this purpose, the content of these webinars will be converted into our usual CPD sessions and loaded onto our web platform. So if you feel that one of these sessions will be of value to a certain F&I, please ask them to complete it. This particular webinar has been accredited with 3 notional hours of CPD through the IISA. So if you can ensure that you've all enrolled correctly with your full name, email address, and ID number, this will ensure that the CPD certificates are accurate. And it also means that you don't have to complete this again on our platform. Today's discussion, we're covering automated advice, which is the regulation and the practical application, which is then followed by a very brief Q&A. And then the second session will be on telesales and then various other income ideas that we have. Now, before I introduce you to our session panelists, I'd just like to take a quick second to guide you through some housekeeping. As you can see, you've all been opened here in mute with videos turned off. This is purely to eliminate any unnecessary distractions. Those of you that cannot hear or see the videos of the panelists when I spotlight them for the questions, if you can just raise your hand, there's a little button at the bottom of your Zoom panel, or you can send me a direct message and then I can try and attend to any potential issues that we may be having from our end. Now, with regards to the Q&A sessions, these are of a bit of a time-sensitive nature, and it's just to ensure that you're not kept out of your offices for longer than necessary. So the questions will be open for around about 10 minutes. If we struggle to get to your question, or it's not attended to, or if you have a question in one of the other presentations, if you could drop an email to info@acmoto.co.za or to either of the panelists involved, their contact details will be showing at the end of the session. So session 1 will be conducted by our very own Jeanette Richardson, or Jen, as she's affectionately known. For those of you that have not had the pleasure of meeting our esteemed speaker, Jen heads up our compliance division. She is also a director of both the ACM risk and ACM compliance groups. And I will let Jen wave. Hi there, Jen. Are you there? Well, I seem to have lost Jen. So without any further ado, let me start her presentation on automated advice.
I absolutely love technology. You know, in our company, from a compliance perspective, it is really convenient to make use of technology to conduct remote monitoring of the F&Is. It eliminated so many problems. F&Is that's off sick, month end where you couldn't really do monitoring with the F&Is, and always it happens so often that we sat in front of an F&I and then a client would arrive to collect the vehicle. And then in the last 2 years, we were all exposed to the pandemic and those challenges, which really meant that we were not allowed to meet with our clients face to face. So we were able to continue to service our clients purely by having a Teams or a Zoom meeting with them. The FSCA also has virtual meetings with FSPs who'd like to meet with them. In actual fact, I've recently attended a regulatory visit, which the FSCA conducted via the Teams platform. It's therefore so obvious that technology has added so much value to our business, and I'm sure it adds value to any business. It assists us to continue servicing our clients, to perform better and to perform faster. Now, in the motor dealer space, you guys have been using technology for years. You know, if I want a specific vehicle, I can go onto the website and I can view a vehicle on the virtual showroom. I can even build myself a car, a yellow car with pink stripes and tinted windows. I can apply for finance and submit the finance application purely by pushing a button. And I can even sign the finance contract electronically. Identification and verification is system driven, and it can be completed within minutes. If I take my vehicle in for a service, it's slapped on a diagnostics machine to identify faults on the car. Insurance policies are incepted electronically. People can pay for a vehicle via EFT. So it is technology, technology, technology. Now, if technology and artificial intelligence have changed the way that we build, sell, and finance vehicles, why don't we use it to offer a financial service? The investment sector is already doing that. They're already using automated advice. So there must be a way that the motor industry can capitalize on automated advice to increase sales. So, yeah, you know, what you have to also keep in mind is it can't be a one-size-fits-all approach. It just won't be appropriate. You have got clients that just wouldn't like to conclude an entire transaction by using technology. They prefer to deal with the person with a heartbeat. The millennials are a different breed. These guys are tech savvy. That's the way they operate. So if they can use technology from beginning to end, it would suit them. So this is really something that we need to keep in mind when we talk about automated advice. Now, before you can consider automated advice as an alternative, it's very important to know what is required from you. Now, in this session, we're going to look at the rules around automated advice, which is also referred to as robo-advice. You all know Board Notice 194 of 2017 specifically focuses on the fit and proper requirements. Now, in this document, the automated advice is defined as follows. Automated advice means the furnishing of advice through an electronic medium that uses algorithms and technology without the direct involvement of a natural person. So I do want to have a look at furnishing of advice. And I think we just need to recap on that to make sure that we understand what the system would need to do. So when a natural person provides or furnishes advice, your F&I would then need to assess the client's affordability, product experience, excuse me, the client's risks, needs, and objectives. And they, based on the information that the client has provided, they are then able to identify a suitable product to assist the client to eliminate or manage those risks, fill their needs, and achieve the client's objectives. The client can then consider purchase that specific product. So if we keep this in mind and we have a look at automated advice, automated advice will really enable your client to access insurance products and receive on-demand advice at a time that is convenient for them at a click of a button. So far, so good. Right. Of course, there's rules, but before I go into the rules, I do want to spend a little time on algorithms, as it plays an important role in the rules that you guys need to adhere to. So what's an algorithm? Excuse me. An algorithm is a procedure used for solving a problem or performing a computation. It acts as an exact list of instructions that conducts specified actions on a step-by-step basis. It is really simply put a if this, then that scenario. So if we have a look at an if and I space, the algorithm would be written, for example, something like this. We would say, if it's a cash client, then a shortfall in the credit life would not apply. So those products would not even be considered. So keep that in the back of your mind. Now, in order for an algorithm to work, you need input data and you need output data. So the input data would be the information about that client. So the client would answer certain questions, and based on that information, it would create output data, which would basically be the product that would be recommended based on the information that was captured by that specific client. Okay, so it's exactly the same as the function that a if and I fulfills, the advice-giving function that a natural person fulfills. This is just an algorithm, if this, then that situation. So, as an automated advisor or a robo-advisor, the insurance department of a dealership will use those algorithms to understand and predict the client's preferences, risks, and goals. So this will happen when you ask certain questions, and the answers to those questions will lead to a model portfolio. If we look at the most basic questions that a F&I would ask a client, it would be, for example, what are you going to use the vehicle for? How long are you going to keep it? What mileage are you going to do? Is there existing service or maintenance plan on the car? What is the deal structure? So that is all information that you will obtain when the information, that the data is captured. So that creates your client profile, and then of course the correct product can be identified based on that client's profile. You must excuse me, I'm not an IT fundi. I've done my best in this explanation. So I truly hope that you do understand. Okay, now we need to have a look at the rules. Again, in the fit and proper requirements, section 37 focuses on the governance requirements of an FSP, and that includes your risk management plan, your business continuity plan, your internal policies and procedures, controls that you have to implement, and so on. Section 38 focuses on automated advice. And when you read section 38, it starts off by stating, over and above the requirements that is noted in section 37, which is the governance requirements, an FSP that provides automated advice must have sufficient human resources that understands the ins and outs of technology and algorithms, which includes the approach to certain algorithms, how it was built, why it was built, what the preferred outcome should be, the rules and the risks supporting the algorithms, any risk to clients arising from automated advice, and then of course monitoring and reviewing all of this to ensure that the client is provided suitable, high quality, and compliant advice. So this human resource department, I'm just going to call the development team for the purpose of this training session. So your development team must monitor, review, and test the advice generated by these algorithms. They need to have filters to identify clients for whom automated advice will not be suitable. So that would be, if this is a cash client, do not identify a shortfall or a credit life because they won't benefit from it. So that would be written into that algorithm. And then they must also review the actual advice that was generated. All of this must be documented in a policy and a procedure. Now, to monitor and test the algorithms and filters, your development team needs to have a couple of things. So they need to have a system design document. And this document needs to set out the purpose, the scope, and the design of the algorithms and the filters. They need to have a documented test strategy. And that document needs to explain how they're going to test, when they're going to test, what they're going to do if there's certain test results, and how they will deal with it. They also have to have appropriate processes for managing any changes to an algorithm and filters. And that can include security arrangements, It must prevent unauthorized access to the algorithms and so on. They must also be able to control and monitor and reconstruct any changes to algorithms and filters. They have to review and update these algorithms when it is needed. They need to be able to pull an algorithm and filter if they've identified that incorrect advice has been provided to a specific client. And they need to frequently monitor and supervise the performance of the algorithms and the filters through an adequate and timely review of the advice provided. Now, all of this must also be kept safely. They must ensure the data integrity and so on. Now, after I've read this, I thought, who are these competent people that they refer to as human resources? Are we now looking at a key individual that's an IT fundi, or IT fundi that knows everything about insurance and should be loaded as a key individual who's going to be responsible for all of this? And I'm sure you are wondering as well. So let's just breathe and take a step back and have a look at what we know. So we do know that your key individual is responsible to manage and oversee the operational ability of an FSP. We do know that the key individual is also responsible to manage and oversee the financial service provided by a representative of the FSP. We also know that the key individual needs to have experience in managing and overseeing the financial service on a specific class of business. We know that automated advice is not a class of business and that it's a type of financial service. So as you can see on the screen, your class of business would be short-term personal lines, short-term commercial lines, long-term insurance, and the list goes on, but I've only focused on these three because that's relevant to the motor industry. Your financial service is automated advice, non-automated advice. So non-automated advice is the advice that your natural persons provide, your F&Is, your representatives. Then you've got scripted execution of sales, your direct marketers and so on, and then all other intermediary service, which is really factual information that can lead to the sale of a specific product. Now, the fit and proper also requires that an FSP has policies and procedures that needs to be implemented and controlled, and the control process needs to be monitored. And this is where the key individual comes in, because the key individual is responsible to implement and control the policies and procedures of the FSP. So they need to make sure that your representatives and themselves adhere to these policies and procedures, all the relevant individuals that deals with a specific function need to adhere to this specific policy and procedure. So if we really go back to the initial question, will your key individual need to be an IT fundi and other way around, and who's going to be responsible? Your key individual will be responsible to ensure that whoever develops the automated advice tool report back to them and adhere to the rules that we have just discussed. So you can either have an internal IT specialist department that will work closely with the key individual and will develop the algorithms and filters to get to a specific outcome, or it can be outsourced to a specialist company that's already developed that tool and that you can make use of to provide automated advice. So you're going to either outsource it, or it's going to be internally or internal department, but they need to report to the key individual on what has happened, what is the outcomes of the testing, and so on. Right. Now we need to have a look at how you can use automated advice as an additional service to increase the sale of certain products. But it's very important that we distinguish between automated advice and execution of sales. I don't want you guys to confuse it. So execution of sales, if we have a look at the definition, it says it means an intermediary service performed by a person on instruction of a client to buy, sell, deal, invest, or disinvest in, replace or vary one or more financial products. It's factual information that's provided to that client, and the client decides whether he wants it or whether he does not want it. No needs analysis is conducted. No recommendation is concluded. That is an intermediary service. So we should not confuse execution of sales and automated advice. I want to talk about examples to illustrate the difference between automated advice and execution of sales. If we have a look at comprehensive insurance quotations, I'm not going to name names because I really don't want to be sued for whatever. If a client completes his data, his input data on a system, and that system generates 5 comprehensive insurance quotes, quote 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and does not recommend a quote, and the client can go through it, it's a like for like comparison, and decide, I want option B, and they click to accept option B. That is an intermediary service, that is execution of sales. But if a client completes the data and gets 5 quotations and the system says, Jeanette, based on what you've completed, we recommend that you purchase option 2. That's the best option for your risk. Then that is automated advice. If I then have a look at option 2 and decide, oh, too expensive, really not interested, and I go and I say, no, I would rather have option 4, the platform then needs to say, please note, we've recommended option 2. This is what option 4 covers. Here's the differences. You will not have the following covers. Are you sure that you still want option 4? I then click yes, makes all the disclosures, terms and conditions, it's accepted, and that is an automated advice. So in the aftermarket sector, it is wonderful to use automated advice. You must remember, you are allowed to market to your current client base. Now, your current client base is a person who you have sold a vehicle to, where you've done finance and insurance, a person whose vehicle you serviced. That is your client. So you are allowed to send some kind of push notification, excuse me, to offer an additional product. So if a client has purchased the vehicle and you see, oh, he didn't buy a warranty, you can send a push notification which basically says, Jeanette, you have bought this car, I hope you're enjoying it. We see that you do not have a warranty. If you want to learn more, click here. So we'll click and complete certain information. But then there has to be more than one option warranty. So your warranties has a platinum, gold, and silver option. So based on the information that I've completed, the platform will then select, say for example, the gold, and it will give me all the ins and outs, and I can read through it and incept the policy, and that it can be part of an aftermarket sale. If, however, you see that I haven't bought a shortfall, and based on my finance structure, there will be a shortfall. If you send that through, you only have one shortfall option. You don't have shortfall 1, 2, and 3. You have got a shortfall. So you will give the client factual information about that shortfall cover, and the client can then decide whether he wants it or not. That is execution of sales. Okay. Then non-sighted deals. It's wonderful to use this for non-sighted deals. We've had so many instances where representatives would phone us and say, it's a cash deal, the car's delivered, what must I do now? How do I complete the record of advice? Do I now need to phone the client and say, are you enjoying your car? Let me sell you a warranty. I'm going to upset the client. So it's the perfect tool to use with those type of clients. Remember, your cash clients will not benefit from a shortfall or a credit life. They will benefit from a warranty though. And you've got various options. So you can again send a mail to this client with this little link saying, hope you're enjoying your car. Unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to talk to you. You might be at risk. You want to learn more, click here and complete the form, and then it will take them through the motions. Okay, so it can be used on non-sighted deals as well. In your service department, it's also a wonderful tool to use. We also sit with the risk, or always sit with the risk, where a service advisor would get very excited about an extended warranty and sell it and explain it incorrectly. I know it doesn't happen in your space, but it does happen. So let's pretend you've got a new person that didn't know any better. So the process would be, the service advisor would say, Jeanette, your warranty is about to expire. Would you be interested in extending the warranty? I'd say yes, and they'd say fantastic. Here's the link, and they can click on the link. I can click on the link. I can complete the information, and again, there must be more than one option. If you only have one extended warranty to sell, it's an execution of sale. If you have a platinum, gold, and silver option, and based on the information that I complete, the algorithms and the filters will do their little thing and push out the platinum is best for you, then that is automated advice. Okay, so it can also be used in those instances. Of course, you will still, or the platform will still need to make all the disclosures as required in sections 4, 5, and 7 of the General Code of Conduct. The client still needs to have a copy of the policy wording, the key information document, and the record of advice. So all of that still needs to happen. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope it added value, and that you may be able to use it to perhaps increase your sales. Thanks.
Thanks, Jen. I see we lost you for a couple of seconds there. I believe you were load shed. but welcome back. If you can unmute. Are you with us?
Yeah, I have unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can indeed. So that was a lot to digest. Before I open the floor to our guests for questions, I got a very quick question. When it comes to sort of a service, so I take my Jeep now on Friday afternoon to Centurion for a quick service. Is the request for that warranty to be extended, because they're going to go through the service history, they'll see what's on it, they'll see the mileage, etc., etc. When I sort of booked my car in for a service originally, obviously they would need to have that consent form that they can send me bits and pieces. But if it's verbal, where they say, I see you've lost the warranty, can we send you a link so you can go through it? Is that what they have to do? Or on Tuesday morning, will I just get an email to say, hi there, we see you don't have a warranty. Do you want to add one?
James, it's an either or situation. Remember, if you take your vehicle in for a service at a specific dealership, you immediately become a client of that specific dealer. So the dealer can ask you when you take your vehicle in for a service if you are interested in extended warranty and provide you with the link, or they can mark it to you, but there has to be an opt-out button. So if you receive it and you don't feel like getting this anymore, you can just opt out and it goes away. Make sense? Was that
One hopes. Yeah, no, sure. So
Okay.
to our attendees, do we have any questions or queries that you would like to raise to Jeanette after that presentation? I see we've got a question from Jackie.
Hi, Jeanette.
my darling?
Just a quick one. So I almost want to ask, you've explained automated advice and execution of sales, and maybe a blunt question, but how TCF is like to James's question. I take my Jeep in, there's a whole lot of different filters on, what that vehicle potentially could qualify for, from the entry-level warranty all the way up to the most expensive one. How TCF is that to just follow a execution of sale process? Because you basically then only allowed to offer one option, either in or out, rather than call it a the full record of advice type process. Where are the shortcomings in an execution of sale process?
So Jackie, we've had a lot of clients that feels that you have to have more than one product and more than one product supplier to be compliant with the TCF requirements. That's not really the case. The fair treatment of customers is if you only have one product, that product must be relevant to your specific target market. If you have more than one product, then your F&Is, or in this case, the automated advice, the platform needs to be able to identify the best product based on that client's profile. So, I know in the motor industry, most of the guys only have a short or a credit life that they can offer. And that's their choice. If the client doesn't want it, they can go and find a credit life or a shortfall elsewhere where it's a product that suits them best. So I don't think there's a real anti-TCF issue. You, as an entity, you've decided that you only want this one product on your panel for a specific reason, and that needs to be justified. So if you only have one shortfall that you can offer, and that's the only shortfall that can be offered in the execution of sale process, then you must feel comfortable that it's best for your target market and it will fulfill all their needs. I'm not sure if I answered your question. Are you comfortable with the answer, or do you need me to elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah, I think, Jeanette, it does. I think there's many products that it's pretty simple. Shortfall, there's not three different types of shortfall, but when it comes to warranty, yes, I mean, there's quite a few. But yes, it does answer. And I think maybe I'm overcomplicating it because we're so used to wanting to give the customer the right advice that the mindset of, to change to only allowing the customer maybe one option rather than three is, maybe something to get used to.
Oh, Jackie,
Thank you.
It's very difficult. I mean, how many shortfalls, how many different variants of shortfall can you actually have? That, I mean, are they really that different? Is it a price issue? So you really need to, if you only have one product, you really need to assess your target market and their needs and ensure that the product that you have in your armory is the best product for your target market. Pete, if do you want to add
No,
anything
don't throw
to
me that
this?
hot potato, Jen.
Okay. No, I just saw you unmuted
No,
yourself in
anyway,
the background, and
yeah.
I thought, let me give you an opportunity.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah, all right. Okay. Anything else?
So there doesn't seem to be any other questions, which is okay. We can move on.
Right.
Our next speaker is Peter Veal, who will be conducting a very brief video topic on telesales. Peter is a man that both you and I know extremely well, a legend in the insurance sector. And I think a chap with the vault of knowledge greater than Fort Knox, and an all-round nice guy. So without any sort of further, let me start Peter's presentation.
Yes, you can see this. At one time or another, just about every one of us will attempt to make a sale on the telephone. It's just part of business. Some will do it as a full-time job, contacting a prospective customer for the first time, while others will try to upsell or cross-sell an existing customer. Whatever the reason, when it involves insurance, there are specific rules that must be followed. But the rules depend on the reason for the call, the type of approach, and the frequency that those calls are going to be carried out. So today, I'm going to attempt to categorize the types of telesales that are usually undertaken by F&Is, and I'll explain the rules that apply to each. First, we have to look at where the rules actually come from. There are various laws that govern telesales, but as far as F&Is are concerned, the primary rules are detailed in the Phase Act, although there is some reference in the Consumer Protection Act and the Policyholder Protection Rules. It is often believed that the Protection of Personal Information Act also addresses direct marketing, but in respect of telesales, it does not apply. It does apply to storage, maintenance, amendment and deletion of information, but not to the act of marketing on the telephone. First, let's have a look at telesales which are undertaken by the F&Is and how they can be categorized, which is actually, as far as I'm concerned, it's either direct marketing or personal selling. So in general terms, direct marketing is very broad in definition. And as you'll see from this slide, it includes telephone sales, mails, ordinary mail, emails, brochures, catalogs, flyers, just about everything you can think of, newsletters, coupons, even social media and websites. Texting campaigns has actually become quite frequent as well. Personal selling, on the other hand, involves a person, in this case an F&I, using his or her skill and ability to convince a customer to buy an insurance product, and whether on the telephone or face-to-face. But when it comes to telephone sales, there's only a very fine dividing line between these personal sales that I'm talking about and direct marketing. So let me look at these in turn. But before I do that, I have to talk once again about advice and intermediary services. We all know very well that insurance products are sold rather than bought. So the best method of closing a deal is by gathering information from the customer and making recommendations based on that information received. Nonetheless, although providing advice results in better sales volumes, the time it takes to go through the selling process on the telephone annoys customers. So usually it is preferable to offer an intermediary service only. If, however, the F&I doesn't, wants to provide advice, the F&I is going to have to proceed as though the customer was in the F&I's office at the dealership. In other words, as though in a face-to-face situation. The rules for providing advice over the telephone are identical to face-to-face. And it's my suggestion that if you want to go the whole hog and provide advice, it's better to do this on a Zoom program or something similar, where the KID documents that you got, these easy to read documents, can be shared on the screen. Now, while the provision of an intermediary service avoids that advice giving process, there are some caveats that still exist. For example, the F&I will have to avoid providing any form of recommendation or suggestion, as this will be deemed to be advice. Also, the F&I will not be able to answer those funny questions during the conversation. Questions kind of, should I, or would you do this, or is this a good policy, and so on. A response to those types of questions would have to be something like, sorry, I cannot give you any form of guidance. You have to make up your own mind. Therefore, right at the outset, the F&I must point out that he or she is only providing an intermediary service and cannot provide any form of recommendation. Whether the F&I decides to provide advice or otherwise, certain information about the products and the services must still be disclosed. I'm obviously not going to go through those disclosures today because you all know them so well, but I will refer to them as I go through, just if it's going to help my explanation. Okay, so now let's look at direct marketing. Direct marketing involves selling to existing customers and previously unknown persons. Their names could have been bought on a data list or supplied by merely taking them out of a telephone directory. So the big question is, what rules apply? Believe it or not, there is no specific rule which prohibits a telesales marketer to contact a prospective client by telephone. Having said this, though, the right of every person to privacy includes the right to refuse to accept, discontinue, or indeed block any communication for the purpose of direct marketing, which means that the direct marketer must check on the South Africa's opt-out list before calling any possible buyer for the first time. There's also a prohibited time when a direct marketer cannot make a telephone call to a customer. And unless it's been changed, it had to be between 8 o'clock in the morning and 7 o'clock in the evening during the week. And I know that there are some regulations relating to weekends and public holidays, but that probably wouldn't impact on the kind of work that an F&I would do anyway. So by now, in what I've said, you must be wondering where the difference is between direct marketing and personal selling. And to do this, we actually have to look at the actual definition of direct marketing as it's shown in the FAYS General Code of Conduct. And as I said before, that provides the driving force behind all insurance sales. So the definition of direct marketing, as you can see, means the rendering of financial services by way of telephone, internet, digital application platform, media insert, direct or electronic mail, and it specifically excludes the publication of an advertisement. I'm not going to be talking about the difference on that today. I think we've already done that in some kind of CPD program in the past. So if we look at that definition, it seems to include all telephone sales, but the definition of a direct marketer is, look at this, a financial services provider or representative who, in the normal course of business, provides all or the predominant part of the financial services concerned in the form of direct marketing. This means that unless the F&I is predominantly selling on the telephone, that person is not a direct marketer. But before I move on to explain personal selling, let me just go through some of the additional rules that apply to direct marketers. Assuming that the F&I is a direct marketer, in other words, doing that as a full-time job, certain information must be provided right at the beginning. And as you can see, that thing, as you see from the screen, it's everything. It's the business or trade name of the dealership the F&I works for, the F&I's license details, the fact that only intermediary services is going to be provided, that's if that is the case. Obviously, the dealership's contact details, the dealership's compliance officer details, and details of the dealership's professional indemnity insurance. But probably the most important rule of all is that all telephone calls must be recorded and a copy provided to the customer on request. And after all the salient features, conditions, advantages and benefits have been disclosed, if the sale is successful, the F&I must apply, or should I say, must supply to the customer in writing all the information that's demanded in the phase general code of conduct. And you know that stuff so well. No need for me to go through it here. Okay, so now let's look at personal selling. This is literally where you already have a customer and you want to either upsell or cross-sell to that customer. In general terms, upselling is the practice of offering a higher-end version of a product, while cross-selling is offering customers additional products that are compatible with that purchase that they made. And of course, that purchase is either going to be a vehicle or some other insurance policy that you sold them in the past. Although selling on the telephone may not be a predominant feature of an F&I's daily activities, I think that the line between personal selling and direct marketing is so fine that only selling to current customers should be considered as personal selling. If a person is not one of your current customers, I believe that the rules for direct marketing should apply. The first issue to address, of course, is whether or not that telephone call should be recorded. The direct answer is that as a telephone discussion can be considered as no different to a face-to-face discussion, there will be no need for the call to be recorded. But there are two significant features that crop in to telesales. The very first one is that the F&I is the one making the contact. It's intruding on the customer's time, right? The approach has been there. So that's the one. And the second is that no signatures of confirmation can be obtained over the phone. Prudence and governance therefore suggests that all telephone sales discussions should be voice logged. The discussion itself must really be almost identical to a face-to-face meeting, including all the disclosures that will be made during a face-to-face discussion. If, however, that call is relating to selling an additional insurance policy and the customer has already received one of your welcome letters, there's no need to go through the information that's in your welcome letter again. It's another reason why you should really have welcome letters. Not everybody does. Now, if the F&I has decided not to give any form of advice, There's no need, of course, to complete an ROA, but full details of what was discussed must be either voice logged or comprehensive recorded in a file. Section 32A of that phase code of conduct actually demands that there has to be a procedure and a system in place to record verbal communications with a customer, to be able to store and retrieve those records, and to keep those records and documentation that's attached to those records safe from destruction. Dealerships might actually want to consider a totally different form of selling on the telephone. This is known as scripted sales, and it's effectively where sales are made in accordance with a script. The beauty of this is that you don't need an F&I to do this. All you need is a person who has a grade 12 national certificate, or a matric, or something similar, and who has undergone that product specific training. I think that we've all received telesales calls where you can hear the person on the other end reading a script. I'm not sure how well those sales can be, but in chatting to colleagues, and I know my own feeling on this, these calls seem to be terminated quite quickly. But a script can be written quite intelligently and can achieve excellent results. For instance, let's assume that the opening conversation goes something like this. I imagine me on the phone here. Hi, is that Mr. Jones? Hi, my name is Peter and I'm from Unique Cars. You bought a Ford Phantom for us in January and I'm just following up. Are you happy with your purchase? I mean, assuming you get an answer, kind of like yes or whatever it is, there's nothing to stop the rep chatting about the car. That person wants to talk about his car. And if there is a problem with it, it's also something that you can feed back into your sales divisions. But let's assume the answer is yes, then you can move on to the sale. And you say, at the time you bought the car, you decided not to buy an extended warranty, and we see from our file that the current Ford warranty you have expires in 12 months. We just wondered if you might have changed your mind. We've got a fantastic deal going right now on extended warranties. Can I tell you about them? Etc, etc, etc. So I think you get the gist of what I'm saying. So you'll certainly have picked up from that example that I provided no advice. But I must say that with scripted sales, you're not even allowed to give advice. It has to be an intermediary service only. And there are some rules. They're not onerous rules. You do have to record all telephone calls. But as I've just mentioned, I think that is just good business practice. Obviously, the script itself must be approved by a key individual, and the salesperson must be under the key individual's direct oversight. This would include having sufficient and adequate controls in place to ensure and to monitor that the salesperson doesn't actually furnish advice to a customer. That's a given. Also, the KI will have to regularly review those recordings, to actually listen to them, to ensure that the salespeople haven't deviated from the script or added something which is not approved. But this whole process, which is time consuming, can be outsourced to compliance officers who are probably better equipped to carry out that function. Also, it's necessary for the compliance officer, obviously, to review and monitor the adequacy and indeed the efficiency of the dealership's controls and quality assurance processes that, relating to the execution of sales. And of course, the KI is expected to review those scripts continuously. Well, that's it on this. I hope I've given you food for thought and something that you can work with in the workplace.
Thanks, Pete. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can. Sorry, I was.
All right.
I was nodding off. No, that's fine. Yeah.
The ninth time you went through your video. Just a quick one. It's with regards to cold calling. I'm sort of trying to say there's no sale of a financial product, but let's say, for example, I'm a dealer and I want to sort of target my fleet side of things, and I'm looking at maybe going into mines, corporate companies, or governmental institutions, and I then am cold calling the various HR departments or purchasing departments to get my foot in the door to sell my fleet of motor vehicles to those institutions. Do we follow the same rules with regards to that direct marketing? I see it as, because I'm directly marketing with a cold call to a company that doesn't know me.
Yeah, cold calls are cold calls, aren't they? As I say, most of the prohibitions come from consumers, private consumers, small businesses, etc. But if it's going to be an ordinary telephone call, there's nothing to stop you from picking up the phone and ringing whomsoever you wish, provided they haven't objected or opted out, and so on. And they can, of course, just put the phone down on you. It's as simple and straightforward as that. In all probability, Jay, let me just add here, in all probability, what you'll find is most direct marketers, people who are going to be direct marketing, because you talk about a cold call, we all do that. We have to do that now and again. Are you talking about just a once-off cold call, or are you talking about somebody ringing people all the time?
Ringing people
all
the time.
Direct marketer, or are you talking about making a phone call?
Yeah, once off. I've got a list of guys. I'm trying to increase my fleet sales, and there's 15 different companies, mines, government institutions on my list, and I'm going to try and get my foot in the door.
Yeah, now you can make that phone call. Nothing to stop you from making that phone call. You can't go to jail.
Oh, thanks. If I can open up the floor, if any of the attendees do have a question for Peter, if you could just raise your hand, I can then put you on the screen. It doesn't look like we've got any takers.
Nobody cares. There's nobody out there.
All right. On that, what I will then do is just start your second presentation.
Okay.
All right.
This is clearly the age of disruption and innovation. And I think you'll agree that if we don't move with the times, we may well be left behind. As compliance officers, we are regularly approached with the question, how can we increase our income? With all the conflict of interest regulations that a dealership and its F&Is have to comply with, the answer is definitely not more aggressive selling. So in this presentation, I would just like to explore other ways that a dealership can increase its income from its financial services division. Now, I know that many of you will kind of poo-poo my ideas, but others will embrace them. So I've decided to call this presentation More Income or Pie in the Sky. You'll see why I've called it that as soon as I start, I'm sure. As compliance officers, we are frequently told that we're nothing but policemen telling our clients what they can't do. Whilst this is often true of many compliance officers, we do see things differently. We try to look at what you can do. And sometimes it means, though, that you will have to do some blue sky thinking. Although the terminology these days is convergent directional thinking, which I've shoved on the screen. It's funny how terminology changes over years, but the action stays the same. I remember when it was called out-of-the-box thinking. And in fact, I can go back even further. I remember when we used to have paradigm shifts. But no matter what you call it, it means looking at things in a different way. The problem is that over many years in management, my experience has been that convincing others to change their approach or to rethinking what they do is almost impossible. There's always been that response of the management, or we don't want to do that, or we're not in the market for this, or some other reason why a new approach would not or could not work. I'm fortunate in that today I'm not going to try to convince anybody to do things differently. I'm merely going to give some examples of what can be done to increase income. For those that place business into a cell captive, the biggest cost that you incur over and above claims payments is the cost of an outside administrator. We've seen fees of more than 15% of gross premium paid straight out of the cell. Although I must confess that that type of fee is uncommon. 7.5% seems to be an average fee, but it doesn't take a mathematician to work out how much that actually comes to. So the first thing to consider is, can we get it cheaper, or even better, can we do it ourselves? I know that your immediate reaction will be that this is contracted out because you don't want to do it, or you're not geared up to do it. Even though I can't see you, I can kind of sense the shaking of heads out there. But let's look at some of the advantages. First, of course, it's a highly profitable business. At 7.5%, the average fee earned on every customer who buys insurance cover could be in excess of R1,000. And I've already mentioned that some administrators charge much more. And indeed, they are allowed to if they're not registered as an FSP that provides advice. So the big question is, should you consider doing this yourself? If you only have a few F&Is, it's probably not going to be economically viable. But if you have, say, 10 F&Is, each selling insurance products to 20 customers a month, you'll be bringing in an extra and substantial income. And to this, you'll be adding a growing monthly income for the monthly policies that you sell. There is plenty of surplus here to warrant the employment of an admin team, even if it is only one person to start off with. And in all probability, you will already employ a person who would like to take on that task. But that face money is only a minor benefit. The reputational benefits will also be substantial. Motor dealers have for many years been talking about the lifetime value of a customer. If the customer is in touch with the dealership in respect of the policies that they've bought, there is a much greater chance of them returning to buy their next car. Plus, it is your dealership, your company, that decides whether or not to pay a claim. And if your F&Is are not mis-selling, just about all claims will be paid. You have very happy customers. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have happy customers now, but when a claim is met, the reputation is earned by the administrator or the insurer, not the dealership. But when it comes to complaints or levels of unhappiness, it is always the dealership to whom the finger is pointed. They're the ones that sold the policy. Very often the dealership doesn't even know that a complaint has been lodged. And this impacts on the reputation of the dealership without the dealership even knowing it. Let's move on and have a look at commission and fees that you can earn. Let's start with the DIC. I'm still not sure what the term DIC stands for. I've always thought that it meant dealer incentive commission. But that doesn't make sense because the incentive is commission. So it should be either dealer incentive or dealer commission, not a combination of the two. And I've noticed recently that NADA calls it dealer introductory commission, which of course makes a bit more sense. So from now on, and when I say DIC, I'm talking about a dealer introductory commission, not an incentive. You will recall that exercise just recently where every motor dealership that is an FSP was asked to complete a DIC questionnaire. I think every motor dealership suddenly panicked, thinking that their DIC is going to be reduced. I can say at the outset that this is most unlikely to happen. In so many cases over the years, the regulator here in South Africa has followed almost to the letter the research and legislation introduced by the Financial Conduct Authority, or the FCA as we call it, in the UK. 3 years ago, the FCA carried out a similar exercise which resulted in 2 simple changes. The first was to remove the ability of dealerships to flex the interest rate upwards so that they could earn more commission. And the second one was that they had to disclose commissions. Nothing else was touched. So now let's get back to the DIC. Every dealership has built a reputation with banks. So in my mind, it would not be difficult to extend this to other assets, even houses. Is mortgage broking so much different to car financing? There's big money in that, and no person understands the NCA and the rules of the NCA more than a dealership's KIs and F&Is. And what about refinancing of vehicles? This is also an industry that is growing very, very rapidly. Let's move on. Is there an aspect of commission or fee that you can earn in respect of your current business practice? Have you ever checked? For example, most dealerships have a binder facility, and in some cases they're not earning fees at all for that service. A dealer can earn up to 5% for doing the work to get a client to enter into an insurance contract. And did you know, here's a strange one for you, one that you probably didn't know. Did you know that in the Insurance Act, warranties, these are the warranties that you sell, are not classified under the heading of motor insurance. They're not even classified under any specific form of insurance, which means that they fall under the miscellaneous class of insurance, which attracts a commission rate or a maximum commission rate of 20%, not 12.5%. The actual definition of the motor class of insurance specifically excludes warranty business. But remember, if you're going to approach an insurer for an increased commission, although the maximum payable is 20%, the insurer is allowed to pay less. It's not restricted to pay, that's the maximum it will pay. But if you do approach them and they want to argue, they cannot claim regulation as their reason for not paying more than 12.5%. I suppose it's possible that they have got a directive from the FSCA or the Prudential Authority that they're not allowed to pay more than 12.5% on motor, but I've never seen one like that. And as far as I'm concerned, it does not exist. So what else can you do to consider increasing your income? We all know that to close deals, selling strategies should be top class and your products should be of optimal design and appropriately priced. But we also know that to be successful, a dealership's product should kind of stand out from the crowd. And every dealership should be searching for a way to achieve that reputation. Now, you all know about TCF, and if you look deeply into it, you'll see that the TCF requirement embraces that very issue of looking at new products or reviewing the products. And in fact, it goes on to demand that products are revisited on an ongoing basis. Now, many of your customers will be natural persons, but not all will have the same profile. Some will be in the low income groups, others will be in upper income groups. To satisfy the needs of all income groups, as well as types of vehicles involved, it's possible that different types of insurance products may be necessary. There'll also be different types of buyers. Let me give you some examples, because you're probably saying to yourself, oh, our products are all designed around all the right people. But let's say an example. Let's say a fleet owner might like to buy a separate extended warranty covering an entire fleet, rather than having individual warranties for each vehicle. Or a farmer might want to cover breakdown of his agricultural equipment. In that former situation, it's obviously necessary to design a new type of policy, perhaps on a blanket declaration basis. And it might even be possible that you'd like to include it in your cell captive, which is a further decision to make. But either way, it could prove profitable for all the players in the distribution chain. And if you look at that farmers thing, maybe a warranty for farmers could even be extended to include mechanical call-out services if the dealership employed those specialists. Let's look at credit life insurance. I mean, credit life insurance arrangements, they've been criticized, sometimes for very good reason. In the early years, they earned an extremely poor reputation, with some sellers earning more from commission from the credit life insurance that they demanded than the margin on the assets that they sold. Obviously, many things have changed since then, but that poor reputation still remains. The other problem of credit life insurance is that many policies have the decreasing sums insured, which have been determined on the assumption that payment of the loan installments are met on time, with defaults and changing interest rates are not considered at all. So this, coupled with the fact that the premiums are usually group rated with no consideration for age or exposure to life risks, results in higher premiums being charged to low risk customers. On the other hand, credit life insurance may be perfect for some, but others might prefer to consider some form of level term cover, with the first beneficiary being the credit provider. As a vehicle is traded in and a new one purchased, all the customer has to do is top up the cover to cater for the new vehicle. This way, the customer pays an increased premium based on age and risk, with the original sum insured being subject to the lower rate. An innovative thinker might even build in a small investment so that on retirement, that customer has sufficient funds to buy his last car for cash. A trial and tested plan to assess whether a policy needs to be reviewed is the old-fashioned trial close, except that it's used to develop a product rather than to close a deal. Let me give an example. In offering a credit life policy, the customer might just say, no thanks. Where this occurs, and it occurs frequently, the F&I could ask the customer with sincerity why the customer doesn't want to buy it. Assuming the majority of customers argue that it's too expensive, it becomes clear that a review of the price is required. Needless to say, this is not going to be an overnight solution, but if every declining customer is approached for an opinion on a policy type, you might be surprised what you can do with that information to improve your products and increase your volume of sales. Now let's take a look at some other considerations. Your F&Is are licensed for all personal lines business. You've been making money out of personal lines insurances for years, simply by passing a lead on to others. This obviously primarily relates to motor comprehensive insurance, those leads that you provide. Now, we all know how valuable a database is. Some companies charge an absolute fortune for a list of contacts. Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment that you sell your clients' names or offer them for sale. I'm only trying to remind you how much it's worth. These days, the type of car that is bought can be considered as part of that person's lifestyle. There are, of course, still those people that see a car merely as a mode of transport, but new and particularly younger buyers see it as part of their character. So why not do a deal with a broker whereby a specific type of personal lines policy with your branding on it is designed with your clients in mind? We've seen many customers opting to buy an OEM's warranty just for the brand. even though the warranties available from independents could be better. Also, you might want to place some of the risk in your captive to earn even greater profits. Well, look, I could go on for much longer. There are many ideas that follow the arguments I've led in this presentation. But as I said before, it was never my intention to try to sell specific concepts. I merely wanted to point out that if you look at your overall skills and knowledge, rather than concentrating what you've always done in the past, perhaps it's time to add some more weapons to your selling armory.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate that. If I could ask you to unmute yourself again.
All right. Am I online now?
You are indeed.
Well, I just say before we get the questions, I'm hoping there are going to be some. I must confess that I was a little bit tongue in cheek, but I did so for a very good reason, and that is that with all the new legislation that's coming out and that's been out of the last 4 or 5 years, it must be clear by now that KIs and F&Is are actually not there to sell cars. They're there to sell and distribute finance products, and they seem to have limited themselves, in my mind, to a very, very narrow income arrangement. That's all. So yes, it was a bit tongue-in-cheek, but and we've got lots of new legislation on the horizon. You're going to hear about that next month, and I think you got to realize that you're in the insurance business and finance business, not in the motor business. But okay, all right, questions. I'm ready to be pounded. Anybody have anything? Yeah.
There's nothing come through just yet from the attendees side, but sort of from my side, as obviously as an FSP myself, in reviewing a product range, sort of first port of call would that be sort of looking into the cancellations of those particular policies, looking into the product sales and rejections and complaints as a first port of call to review. So for example, I've got, let's say, 10 different types of warranty, silver, gold, platinum, and then obviously some's insureds, just to really look at those to see what is selling, what isn't selling, and then compare the sort of the complaints on a claim to whether it can be adjusted, or cancellations, rejections from the administrators.
Yeah, James, you know, that would be quite right in a perfect world. The reality is that every F&I, every salesman, every person in insurance distributing products has, and that's kind of what they work on. So in other words, you might have an F&I that has 10 products for sale, and 5 of them are being sold all the time and the other 5 are not. It doesn't necessarily mean the other 5 products need to be reviewed. It just, so you got to, as a KI, you've got to go in a bit deeper than that to find out why that salesperson isn't selling them or not closing deals. So it could be a training thing. If you find out that that person has done their best and they've had training, but those 5 products are not being sold for some reason, absolutely right. You would delve into it in a very different way. Certainly, in general terms, yes, you'd look at complaints, you'd look at claims rejections, you would look at a whole host of different things to see whether products had to be reviewed, whether the selling process had to be reviewed, or whether the selling people had to be reconsidered and retrained. So you've got 3 aspects to consider, all in alignment, James. It's not just one aspect of it, one part of it.
Sure. And then just a quick one, just on the investment side of things. I'm just trying to rack my brain onto which, would that be an extension of categories? So for example, you mentioned that, you know, maybe there's a small investment portion added to that particular credit life side of things where he could then cash that out on his 5-year and possibly, well, pay off the balance of the car. Would that then, I'm just trying to think of which category that would fall in, like
Oh,
Cat C or
license, you mean?
something.
What license?
Y-
If you,
yeah,
if
so
you
that
only
would
got
be
that, yeah. If the F&I's only got that that very simplistic life insurance license, I guess a B1A or something. If they've only got that one, then obviously no investment part can be there. But if they've got the other one, which is just the B1 or the B, I can't remember which ones they are now, but there is one which is still the very simple one, and it just adds a small amount of investment to it. Which you can do, but the investment cannot change. In other words, it's not discretionary that the client will be able to say, I'd like to move that investment portion from A plan to B plan. It would just be fixed in that particular product. But yes, it's a very simplistic one, and dealerships that we have as clients would be able to do that.
Okay, well, the list is extremely quiet, Peter.
Sorry about that. They usually are when I do no, I think everybody falls asleep when I do presentations. I know that I probably would, but yeah. Anyway, if there's no questions, that's great.
Super. All right. Well, let me. So that sort of generally would bring us to a close. I do hope that the participants here that have joined us enjoyed these presentations, and we certainly do look forward to hosting you in October. As Peter just quickly mentioned, the next topic does revolve around the regulation on the horizon and closer. Again, the contact details for Jen, Peter, and General, if you did have a couple of questions or you are busy processing those particular presentations, they are on the screen. I am sure that you will get in contact with our panelists. And on that particular topic, I'd like to thank Jeanette and Peter for your attendance. I really do thank you for those particular presentations. And I look forward to hopefully hosting you in October.
Yeah. Then with that, I say, fairly well, everybody. We'll chat soon.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.